Hey everybody. Um, Finally gotten around to doing the review I said I was going to do in the last video I did, which was Smash Brothers. I said it was going to be done that week, but I didn't get around to it. So I'm going to do it now, and I'm going to talk about two games here in the series, basically the whole series of games. And it's mainly going to be one game, but I'm going to mention the other one near the end. But that game is Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together, available on the Super Famicom or the PSP. You can also get it on the PlayStation 1, but I've never played that version. I don't own that version, so we're going to be talking just about these two. So, Tactics Ogre, mainly this one. Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together. Awesome game. Um, I'm a huge fan of strategy RPGs. Huge fan. I love Final Fantasy Tactics, Disgaea, even Tactics Advance on the Game Boy Advance, which I know a lot of people didn't like. I loved it. And a lot of the other ones too. There's a lot of lesser known kind of strategy RPGs. Some of them are good. Some of them are not so good. So this one here, in my opinion, pretty much represents the pinnacle of the genre. And this one's still sealed, as you can see. I got this actually pretty recently. I owned it back when it came out for the PSP. I bought it brand new, but I ended up trading it in or selling it or something. I don't remember why. It was several years ago. But back then, I didn't really keep as many games as I do now. So I think I just ended up, trading in to move on to something else. And I never actually beat it back then either. So um, when I got my PS Vita, this is one of the first games I downloaded on the Vita, and I played through it and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was freaking awesome. So we're gonna go ahead and do a review of it and see what's up with it. So anyways, Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together. Um, Originally released for the Super Famicom only in Japan. Later for the or not the Super, but the PlayStation and the Saturn, I believe, in North America. So that was the first time that that us Americans actually got to play the game, unless you spoke Japanese, which I do not. So I never played that version. I didn't play it until this came out for the PSP. So from what I understand, the PlayStation version is more of just like a port of the Super Nintendo version, just translated with all the graphical issues, slowdown, and all that comes with PS1 ports of Super Nintendo games. So not the best version of the game to play, but this one, definitely worth playing. This is the definitive version of the game. There's a lot of upgrades to it, a lot of things that they added in that weren't in the original. So hopefully I can remember all of them. I may forget some things, so bear with me. But anyways, let's get into the story and all that before we waste any more time. I'm not going to hold this up either. But story in the game is awesome, I thought. It's not like anything super like groundbreaking or original. It's basically just you and a group of folks um, basically getting embroiled in this huge clan war on the island nation where you live, and your clan is basically the clan that you and your friends belong to, or one of them's your sister actually, but are kind of like the smaller clan that's being kind of like subjugated by the others, and you're basically going through and trying to you know make a future for your people, I guess you could say it. That's how it starts, at least. It actually does evolve past that. There's a lot of other stuff going on, but I'm not going to spoil that. That's really just really, you should find that out for yourself by playing. But I really liked the story. Really similar to Final Fantasy Tactics on the PlayStation, which this game actually came out, or not this one, but this one actually came out before Tactics, obviously, because it's on the Super Nintendo. It was a later Super Nintendo game. I think it was 95, but still a couple years before Tactics. So if you're into Final Fantasy Tactics, like the storyline, definitely check it out because it's very similar. I actually found it to be better, honestly. I'm no like literature critic. I'm not gonna like go into how the story, how good it is like objectively or anything, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well told. I liked the characters. There's a ton of different characters you can get in this game. They all have their own, unique personalities, backstories, and all that. Not all of them are like super duper fleshed out, but most of the main ones are, and a lot of the side ones also. Like a lot of the villains get a lot of screen time, and it's really cool. I mean, it really makes you feel like they're not just like throwing these random characters in. Everyone's got their place. I don't know. It all just comes together to form a really great story, and probably the best thing about the story isn't actually the story itself, but just the way that you can interact with it, I guess. You actually get choices in this game, like several times throughout the game. You'll have to make a choice between two pretty rough options, and depending on what you choose, it'll pretty much dramatically impact the way the story will play out for you. I mean, it's like a branching pathways, and it happened several times throughout the game. Which was cool, I thought. I mean, that was like stuff like that was way ahead of its time for the Super Nintendo. I don't know if all that was in the Super Nintendo. I assume it was, but because I haven't played too far in the Super Famicom version, it's pretty much damn near unplayable if you don't speak Japanese. I mean, it's playable on a very like basic level, but once you get past the first few areas, like you're gonna get stuck. So, pick up the PSP version if you're interested in playing it. But yeah, I mean, story top notch for an RPG in my opinion. One of the best I've seen in an RPG probably ever. I mean, really, those are strong words, but I don't know. It's just classic, classic old school RPG goodness. Like if you're into the stories from like, the older RPGs on like the Super Nintendo or the PlayStation, you'll probably really like this, because I found that a lot of stories nowadays in RPGs, they're just really like not that interesting. I mean, the characters aren't interesting. The story is just kind of like, all right, like I kind of feel like I've played this game like a million times already. But I don't know, this one, like I said, it was nothing like new or groundbreaking, but it really draws you in because you actually, as the player, are directly involved in a lot of stuff that goes on. So I don't know, really well done story. I really enjoyed it. Gonna move on from there because not really much to say about that. That's something you kind of have to find out for yourself to be able to appreciate it. But let's see what next. We'll talk about the graphics and music for. We'll save the gameplay for last because there's a lot to go over in gameplay with this one. So graphics and music. Graphics are pretty simple. I mean, it's basically a carryover from the Super Nintendo version with some upgrades. All the the battle graphics and all that definitely look like they could have been done on Super Nintendo. The only thing they really upgraded was like the spell effects, the menus, and the character portraits, which are standout in my opinion. I loved the character portraits. The artwork was awesome in this game. Basically, from what I understand, the game was basically made by the same team that did Final Fantasy Tactics, or I should say the same team did Final Fantasy Tactics later, which was Quest. I don't know if you can see that, but Quest is the brainchild behind the Ogre Tactics and Ogre Battle series, or Tactics Ogre, and Final Fantasy Tactics. So it's the graphics look. I mean, if you've played a strategy RPG like on Final Fantasy Tactics, Tactics Advance, any of those, you're gonna it looks pretty standard for the genre. Nothing too like crazy, nothing too flashy, but it gets the job done. And the character portraits are what really make the characters come alive, just because they're very detailed. They all have their own kind of personality. I don't know. They're really realistic looking. Like it's just a really realistic art style. It doesn't look like anime or anything like that, which would, I think, clash with the theme of the game. And just, I guess, to go over that, it's a pretty dark game, honestly. Like the story, a lot of screwed up stuff happens. The graphics reflect that. I mean, it's pretty, like, for this style of game, it's pretty gritty. So, second only to, like, Final Fantasy Tactics, it's probably even more screwed up than that game, honestly. But graphics, like I said, pretty simple, other than the character portraits, which look awesome. Music, again, is awesome. I wish I had the soundtrack to this game. One of the best, in an RPG ever, probably. I consider the Final Fantasy Tactics soundtrack to be pretty much my favorite like RPG soundtrack of all time, and this one pretty much like, I mean, it's up there with it. I don't know if it like passed it, but it's like tied. Again, like I said, very similar to Tactics. It's kind of the same kind of thing, but I don't know. I mean, the game feels different enough that it doesn't feel like Final Fantasy Tactics like rehash. I mean, it's its own thing for sure. There's no like, Final Fantasy Tactics had a lot of like mystical and magical elements in the storyline, where this one really doesn't. I mean, not until the end at least. It's more of just like, a standard like war story. It's fairly grounded for the most part. With the exception of course, like you got like wizards in your party and like you can tame dragons and stuff like that, but there's no like, there's not really any like, weird like Deus Ex Machina or you know, like dude trying to like usurp God or anything like that. Throughout most of the game, I'll say that just throughout most of it, I'll say, not to spoil, but pretty. I was talking about graphics and I went off on other stuff, but yeah, the graphics are, like I said, pretty simple, but they get the job done. Character portraits look awesome. Art style is awesome. Everything's nice and gritty, just how I like it. Really works well for this kind of game, since it's a dark game. In theme, the graphics definitely reflect that, which is a good thing. Oh yeah, never mind. I was talking about music. This is going off the rails, but yeah, like I said, music awesome in the game. Every theme has its place. Fits in with the game so well. A lot of epic tracks, a lot of memorable tracks. I don't know. I just kind of hard to explain music. Just explain how it is. Like in a review, I would just say go listen to it on YouTube, because I know the songs are on YouTube. The game does have a dedicated music player as well, which you'll unlock songs throughout the game, so you can listen to the music there as well. And another cool thing about that is that when you listen to music in the music player in the game, it actually has like notes from the composers, kind of telling you what they were going for with that theme or whatever, which I thought was pretty cool and it definitely added to it. Not really much to say about the music other than that, other than I thought it was pretty awesome. It's kind of hard to explain that kind of thing in a game, but one of the best soundtracks in an RPG probably ever. I mean, of all time, for sure. I mean, it stands up there with the likes of like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy 6 and 7, Final Fantasy Tactics. I mean, it's like right up there with those games. So if you're into, I mean, I don't really see how you couldn't like the soundtrack, but I mean, it fits the game perfectly. It was so well done, and it's such a great upgrade from the Super Nintendo version too, because the soundtrack is remastered from the Super Nintendo version, which had great music as well. I mean, I'm not knocking that, but the remastered tracks completely own them. So definitely go with the PSP version. Now we'll move on to the real meat of it, is gameplay. 13 minutes in, so I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible, so this video isn't like 45 minutes, but there is actually a lot to go over. If I forget a lot of stuff, I might make another video later on, like kind of going more in depth with all the different stuff going on. But gameplay wise, it's pretty standard for the genre. Again, like I said, this is like strategy RPG in its purest form. But the remastered version on the PSP actually added a lot of stuff, like a lot. And basically how it works is that like every one of these games, you got your army of characters. You level them up. You move around on the field, attack enemies. You can use an item, use magic, or you can wait out your turn, which basically lets your next turn come around quicker. When you level up in this game, it's actually a bit different. You don't actually level up characters individually. You level up classes of characters, kind of like what they did with Valkyria Chronicles. It's kind of like that, how like every scout would be the same level. Every shock trooper would have been the same level in that game. But in this one, it's kind of the same way. Like all your knights will be the same level. All your clerics will be the same level. All your whatever. Which was kind of weird at first, but it's definitely something I got used to in the first like hour of the game. I mean, it'll be weird at first, but you'll get used to it. Like I guarantee you. And it's really like in the end, it's not that much different, and it's actually pretty convenient in a lot of ways. Like, if one of your characters dies, like your best knight dies, you can just hire another guy and turn him into a knight, and he'll be the same level. The only thing you won't have are the skills, which I'll get into in right now, actually. There's a skill system in the game too, which they pretty much rip straight from Final Fantasy Tactics. Although there's a lot more to it in this one. In Tactics, basically how it works was that every action you took on the battlefield, you'd get experience, and not only experience, but you'd also get job points, which you could basically exchange for different like abilities and like spells and stuff like that, like tied to your whatever class your character was. This one works the same way, except that you just have a way more options with how you customize your skills. Like in Tactics, I'm going to compare this game to Final Fantasy Tactics a lot, but in Tactics you basically had your class, and then you had your class's ability, which for like a knight it would be like battle skills or whatever. For a mage it'd be like black magic or whatever, that kind of stuff. And then you could set a secondary skill from another class to that class, so basically kind of have two at once. And then you had another slot for a support skill and then a move skill. In this game it's way more complex than that. I mean, that was basically a dummied down version of what this game does, because in this one, instead of having like those different kind of categories for skills, you still have your categories, but you basically it will give you 10 slots to put whatever skills you want in there. And they range from all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's like a million of these things. You got like passive buffs, you got the ability to use magic to strengthen certain elements, raise your resistance, increase your movement, different skills you can use in battle, like attack twice, or attack with an automatic critical, or recruiting monsters, stuff like that. And you can pick whatever ones you want, as long as you can have 10 maximum for each character, so you can pretty much set them up however you want, which is way more complex than what Tactics offered. I mean, it's a huge part of the game too. Like you're gonna have to micromanage your skills if you want to be successful in this game. If you don't, then the computer's gonna kick your ass. I'm gonna go ahead and say they're gonna start kicking your ass early. Don't think you can get through the game without messing with your skills. I mean, you're gonna have to have everyone set up perfectly. I mean, you're gonna have to pore over these menus, make sure everyone's set up correctly before you go into these battles, or else you're gonna get your ass kicked. And I guess going with that, if you don't like micromanagement in games, then you're probably gonna hate a lot of this game, because a lot of it is micromanagement. A lot of times I was spending like upwards of like 30 minutes to an hour between stages, just making sure everyone had the right equipment and skills and whatnot. And I'll go more into like some of the skills a little later maybe, because there's a ton of like little nuances to it. But that's basically how it works. You buy your skills, set up your characters, equip your weapons, and send them into battle. Hope you win. And class changing also is a little bit different in this one. In Tactics, you could only class change if you met the requirements to move on to a different class. Like say if you wanted to be a ninja, you had to like spend time as certain other classes first. In this one, it doesn't really work like that. You basically, all you need is an item that'll let you change classes. And some of them you can buy, some of them you have to get from killing enemies. So most of them are pretty easy to get, so you're not going to have too much trouble with that, except for like a couple of the classes, which are a lot more like exotic, I guess. And some of the classes require like other things to happen, like your character has to get killed while having a certain item equipped and stuff like that. So class changing works a little bit differently. It's actually a lot easier to switch classes. Like you don't have to train like in certain classes first before you switch. You can switch whenever you want as long as you have the item. So that's pretty, that works pretty well. It just makes it a lot easier to get the classes you want without having to screw around with a bunch of stuff you don't care about first. So that's pretty cool. Some of the skills in the game have levels of their own. Like some skills you buy like different tiers. Like you'll have one that increases strength, and then like when you reach a certain level, you'll be able to get the next one in that tier that increases your strength more. Whereas some skills like your weapon skills, which is I guess something else I should go over. some of the skills in the game are tied to your weapons. Like you'll get a skill that it's like sword, so it increases your sword damage and your accuracy. And every time you attack with a sword, that skill will gain experience and it'll actually level up, which takes friggin' forever, by the way. But when it actually levels up, you'll get more damage and accuracy with whatever weapon that the skill is attached to or associated with. So it's kind of like weapon proficiency levels, and it goes the same with magic, like elements. So that'll be a huge part of the strategy later on in the game. Once because weapon levels are also how you get finishing moves, which are these crazy powerful moves that you can use on the enemy when you have enough like technical points, which are another thing in battle. Is when you get hit, you kind of fill up this bar of like technical points or whatever, and you can use those to do different skills and abilities. So pretty standard. I mean, it's the battle system itself in this game is nothing complicated. I mean, it's something that any RPG player will probably figure out within the first couple hours. And there's some pretty decent, actually really good tutorials at the beginning of the game. Like the first few stages, you're kind of with this like band of knights or whatever, and they're kind of just showing you the ropes, kind of showing you how to play and how things work. So new players shouldn't have too much of a difficult time getting into the game, especially with those tutorials. And there's a ton of like help menus. I mean, the game wants to help you out, help you learn like anything you want to know about it. So it's not too hard to figure out how things work. But let's see. Well, skills. That's pretty much it for the skills. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory once you start like looking at it. Like if you get the game, basically what you're going to want to do is get your weapon skills early. Like decide which weapons you want to use early and get those skills. And then later on in the game, you'll probably have to get elements too, because you'll start getting elemental weapons. And not only will like the weapon skills help that weapon, but your augment elements skills will help that weapon as well if it's the same element. So a lot of stuff to deal with, I know, but it's satisfying to me. I mean, I'm not one that dislikes micromanagement. I don't really mind it in RPGs. I think in a game like this, it's definitely a plus because you really feel like you're growing your own army, and your characters are going to turn out like completely different than other people's characters. I mean, it's like there's just a ton of different variables going on. So nobody's two armies will be the same, which is cool. I mean, it makes it feel more like a personal experience, I guess, because it's like your army that you grew. Let's see what else with the game. Difficulty and length. The game it's not that. I mean, it's tough for sure. There are some tough battles, but it's definitely not the hardest game I've ever played. I've heard some people say that this game is really challenging. And I guess it could be if you're neglecting your skills and whatnot. If you're not, then you probably won't have too much trouble. I mean, I didn't like die like really at all in this game until like really like near the end. And it is a pretty long game too. It took me probably about 45 hours to beat the story once. And a cool thing about that is that once you beat the story, not only is there a ton of like epilogue stuff and a ton of side quests, which I'm not even going to get into the side quests because that's like a whole separate video. But you can actually go back once you beat the game. You can actually go back to certain parts of the story and replay from there and kind of see how it turns out differently if you choose different things. And that's with all your levels and stuff. It's basically like New Game Plus, but you can start anywhere instead of at the beginning. I mean, you could start at the beginning, but you can start, right before the last battle again if you wanted, or just anywhere else, and you can jump around, throughout the story, like however much you want. And you're like once you beat it, so it pretty much blows the game wide open. It makes it so you can't miss any of the characters or items or anything. And there's a ton of characters to get in the game. I mean, that's like another thing. There's like a bajillion characters that you can recruit, and I'm talking about like storyline, like unique characters. There's like a ton of them, way more than was in like Tactics. So that was cool, and I really liked getting those characters because some of them look awesome. I mean, so, like just the character portraits, like seeing those, like it makes you want to get them because they just look awesome. So let's see what else. I mean, that's length, and I mean, I've played for 125 hours. That's how many hours I put into the game. I did a lot of side stuff, and I'm only at level 35, which is pretty high in this game actually. I think 50 is probably the highest, and I would assume. But and you don't even have to be. I mean, you can beat the game probably around level like 19 or 20 or so. So I mean, you don't have to level grind like at all in this game really. I didn't. I pretty much went straight through. I mean, I fought some extra battles here and there when I just didn't really feel like progressing the story yet, or when I was looking for certain items and stuff. Because that's another thing. Equipment in the game is really hard to come by later on. Like once you get to a certain point, like in the shops will pretty much stop upgrading their stock, and you'll have to get all your equipment from the enemies, which is pretty unreliable. The best way to do that is to recruit them onto your team, steal their equipment, and then kick them back out of your army. So, I mean, that's what I was doing at least. So, just a little tip there. Once the enemies start kicking your ass with weapons that you don't have, start recruiting them onto your team. Or I guess technically you could steal them too, or you can kill them, but it's not always guaranteed that you're going to get their item when you kill them. And stealing, I never had like a thief in my party the whole game, so I never tried stealing. I heard it wasn't very effective, so I didn't try that out. Um, let's see. I mean, that's pretty much it for the game. I mean, there's so much to talk about here. I'm just kind of going over the basics, or just the stuff that kind of came to me. I mean, this is already like almost 27 minutes, so I should wrap it up with this game and move on to the next one. But Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together, the best strategy RPG I've ever played, and definitely in my top 10 RPGs of all time. Amazing game. It did actually have a sequel, which was Tactics Ogre, The Night of Lotus for the Game Boy Advance. This one I actually played first back in high school because one of my friends had it. He let me borrow it, and I was a huge fan of Final Fantasy Tactics Advance and just Tactics, so I was like all over it back then. But he wanted it back like within a week or so, so I didn't get to play that much of it. This one it's a sequel, but it's actually a prequel to Let Us Cling Together, focusing on one of the key characters in that game, who I'm not going to spoil, which is a big reason why I wanted to play this game after it. Pretty good game, a lot simpler than that one, a lot simpler, and kind of in a bad way, in my opinion. I found this one, like like later on in the game, after I hit about 30 plus hours, I started getting pretty like fatigued playing it. And I think the reason for that is because the gameplay's a lot slower, like a lot slower in this one, and it's a lot more simple. Like the battle system's like much more basic, but it's slower too at the same time, which is kind of like two bad things. It doesn't balance out. The gameplay this is worth mentioning actually. Gameplay in this one is like lightning fast. Like the computer takes no time to make their moves. They're just like, I mean, stuff moves really quickly. Whereas in this one, the computer takes forever to make their moves, and they're not very smart either. And you have way less options in battle. You don't have all your skills and stuff like that. There's none of that in this one. So it is a lot simpler and slower. So it might be a little harder to get into. I would recommend playing this one first, and then if you really like it and care about the story like I did, move on to this one just to see how the story plays out. Not that this is bad by any means. It isn't. It's just a lot more simple. The music is nowhere near as good. I mean, it's the Game Boy Advance, so what do you expect? I liked the music in this. Actually, I thought the compositions were cool, but the Game Boy Advance sound quality really holds it back, and it gets really kind of repetitive and annoying after a while. So, still a good game though. One of the better strategy RPGs on the Game Boy Advance. There are quite a few of them. Some of them are just kind of middle of the road. This one and Tactics Advance are my favorites on the system. So, great game. Definitely a worthy follow-up to Let Us Cling Together, but it did have some shortcomings. I thought it wasn't quite as complicated, which some people may think is a good thing, but in a game like this, when it's too basic and slow like that, it kind of just gets boring after a while. I don't know. I mean, that's just kind of kind of my reviews or overviews of the Tactics Ogre series, which I didn't actually mention is actually a kind of a sub-series of Ogre Battle, which I've never actually played. Or that's not true. I did play one on the Super Nintendo, but that was like literally like 10 years ago, so I don't remember like anything from that game. But great series. Probably like if there were more games in the series, it'd probably be my favorite RPG series of all time because I loved Let Us Cling Together. I would consider this game a classic in my opinion. Um, and this is the definitive version to play. I mean, this game is super cheap too. I got this for literally like $4 brand new. So there's pretty much no excuse for getting it unless you don't have a PSP. If you have a PS Vita, then you can download it from PSN for $20, which is still a good deal because the game is long, chock full of content, challenging. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. So, you know, $20 is pretty much a steal for a game like this. But I don't know. I mean, I this is going on. There's past 30 minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. But I'm gonna rewatch this. If I missed a lot of stuff, I'll probably do another more in-depth video on this game at least because there's actually a ton of stuff to talk about and a ton of stuff that is worth mentioning. I'm already kind of remembering some stuff that I missed, like weather effects and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, check out the series. It's awesome. If you're into like the kind of more old school RPGs for like the Super Nintendo and whatnot, then I think you'll really like this game. It's kind of got a lot of that retro charm to it as well. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Have you ever played Tactics Ogre? Either of them? Final Fantasy Tactics? Which one do you think is better? In my opinion, I gotta side with Tactics Ogre here. I think this one's a lot better than Tactics Advance. Well, not a lot better, but definitely better than Tactics Advance. And I don't know. I quite enjoyed it. Just the whole game just really came together to form something special, I guess you could say. I don't really know how else to say it, honestly. Just an awesome game. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and end this here, rewatch it, and see what I missed. But thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you later. Have a good one.